I'm Mark Stone in the Sky News Bureau here in Washington, D.C., and what a night it has been.
It's like a dream that comes true.
I'm overwhelmed with joy, but sad for how we became.
I'm cautiously pessimistic about what's going to happen there.
We need to look into the details, Mark. We still don't know.
Four people there who we'll hear from in this episode of Trump 100 as we absorb the news that Israel and Hamas have agreed to President Trump's peace plan for Gaza, phase one of it, at least. We'll examine how events unfolded, what's been agreed, what happens now, and will it last, and the extent to which this achievement is down to President Trump. Masses to get into. On many occasions over the past 2 years, and so many times on this pod, we have discussed the prospects for peace in Gaza, Trump's role in the war and his search for peace, getting hostages home, aid in, and bringing the killing to an end. So are we today on the cusp of that moment? The first word that something was moving came at just before 5 p.m. Washington time on Wednesday. I was watching President Trump holding an event at the White House. It wasn't about Gaza. It was about his domestic political plans and political challenges. Then he was handed a note by his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. It was, on its own, kind of a dramatic moment. The president interrupted with a note, then a whisper in his ear from Rubio. It reminded me of that time when George Bush was interrupted by his chief of staff on 9/11 to be told about the attacks. This time, altogether different news for the president. He absorbed the note and then he spoke.
But they're not smart enough. Oh, my microphone's broken. They're smart, but they're not smart enough. They have been covered by these liberal cities for so many years. And that's why we're all working with Treasury, with all these different departments to find the criminal conspiracy.
Okay. I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly, so I will take a couple of more questions.
The cameras caught what had been written on the White House embossed page by Rubio. Very close, it said, underlined. Then, we need you to approve a Truth Social post soon so you can announce deal first. Within a couple of hours, the Truth Social post came with photos soon after of negotiators in Egypt smiling and hugging. An extraordinary sight, an image, I am sure, for the ages. The Truth Social post said, I am very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have both signed off on the first phase of our peace plan. This means that all of the hostages will be released very soon and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed-upon line as the first steps towards a strong, durable and everlasting peace. It went on to say, all the parties will be treated fairly. This is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world, Israel, all surrounding nations and the United States of America. And we thank the mediators from Qatar, Egypt and Turkey who worked with us to make this historic and unprecedented event happen. Blessed are the peacemakers, so wrote Donald Trump. He then went on Fox News to revel in his success.
The whole world came together, to be honest. So many countries that you wouldn't have even thought of it, they came together. The world has come together around this deal. And that's something I would say that without that wouldn't happen. So many countries that you wouldn't have thought of have wired their best wishes and their commitment to do whatever is necessary.
So let's examine what all this means. Whose success is it, and will it last? In a moment, I'll talk to Xavier Abouid, a former advisor to the Palestine Liberation Organization, a man I got to know well from my time based in the Middle East, and a man who is close to the leadership within the Palestinian Authority. But first, Nadav Eyal is a journalist and commentator for the Israeli paper Yediot, a reporter with impeccable sources within Israel. Nadav, thanks so much for joining us here on Trump 100. I guess, first of all, your thoughts. This is an historic moment.
Indeed, this is Israel's longest war, and it has just ended. There are very few people in Israel that think, reliable sources that think that the war can actually renew now. The general dynamics is not as we have seen in previous ceasefires. The general idea is that this is an end to the war. This is what President Trump wants. President Trump is going to visit Israel In 2 days, he has been invited by the prime minister to speak in front of the Knesset, and the entire messaging that we're hearing from both Washington, from Arab capitals across the region, and from Jerusalem is that the war is over. It's the first phase that they agreed upon, but the general idea, the general spirit in the region right now is that hostilities are not supposed to resume.
Let's talk first of all about President Trump. How much credit do you give him as a leader and as a character for getting the Middle East, getting Israel, getting the Palestinians, Hamas to this point?
I think one could not stress enough the importance that President Trump played here. And he did something that was absolutely exceptional. And I'm going to take you, Mark, to the resolution of what he did there. I'm not talking about the general pressure coming from him and his personal devotion to the idea of getting the hostages back, his ability to both have a close contact with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but also, and he did that with the first deal too, basically say, now you sign the agreement, pressuring him to the last moment. But let me talk about something that is purely tactical, but actually really important. If you and I would have been speaking a month ago, 3 weeks ago, and you would have told me that the deal would begin with all the live hostages, all the 20 live hostages of Israel being released by Hamas without the IDF leaving completely the Gaza Strip, without having still the structure of what's going to happen in the Gaza Strip in the day after completely finalized, and with an idea that Hamas will, to some extent, decommission its weapons, disarm, have its military infrastructure somehow disintegrated. If you would have told me that a month ago, I would have told you that it's a non-starter, which was the basic general wisdom across all the worlds of negotiations. And what the American president did here, what President Trump did here, is say, first, the hostages and all of them. And by doing that very cleverly, this allowed the war to reach this point. Why? Because it's the Qataris and the Turks that he managed to push towards his corner that wanted the war to end too, but he managed to somehow enlist them to pressure Hamas, that said, if the hostages are back home, there is no legitimacy to the war. And this was a point that everyone covering this knew. Within Israel, in Washington, D.C., in Europe, in the UK, everywhere you can look, if the hostages are back home, Israel has no legitimacy to continue litigating this war. And he managed to expand the framework of possibilities leading us to this agreement. And this is really the best that statesmanship can actually do in these kind of conditions.
I wonder, I mean, that's fascinating. Did you believe when Donald Trump was a candidate, when he first became president for the second time, did you believe then that he would be capable of that sort of, well, as you describe it, seemingly a masterstroke of statecraft?
I sort of, well, the day that President Trump was elected, or he wasn't the president then, it was the president-elect, I wrote on X that I spoke with 4 sources, Arab, Israeli, and other sources across the region, and they all said the same thing to me. Only President Trump can bring them back home and end the war. And I wrote that, and what I got, I wrote this as a journalist. It wasn't my op-ed. I spoke with sources, and I brought that, and I got, I don't want to say a litany, but I got a few comments saying, "Are you joking? Are you joking?" And I wasn't joking, and here's why: because of the Abraham Accords, because President Trump is very popular in Israel, so he is more popular than Prime Minister Netanyahu. And in the condition that was created as a result of the war, Israel being so isolated internationally today, still having this very capable, the most powerful man on earth, still in its corner, it was put in a situation in which whatever the president decides, whatever the White House decides, this is what's going to happen. This is on the one hand. On the other hand, this president has wonderful relationship. We can go into the reasons why, with Qatar, with Saudi Arabia, with the Gulf countries. You have Erdogan there, and all of these, many of these countries were persona non grata in Biden's Washington D.C., and they're friendly, very friendly with the Trump administration, and that gave him a lot of leverage here.
It's fascinating. So why was Trump able to do what Biden couldn't?
Well, first of all, I want to be fair about this. Wars have a tendency to mature to a point in which all sides want to end them. So I should say that. And President Biden did try again and again to get, a two-phase ceasefire. And the first deal that was pushed by the Trump presidency, even before he came into office, that was a deal that was actually negotiated by the Biden administration and by Bill Burns as the head of the CIA, as you know, Mark. And they worked really hard to get that deal. And it's true that it was Trump that basically ordered the deal to be done. And he sent Steve Witkoff to Prime Minister Netanyahu. And Witkoff basically said to Netanyahu that he has no choice. And this is how we reached the deal back in January. So after I'm saying all that, the reason that Trump managed to do so was very much related to the failed assassination attempt in Doha. And that's, again, to the credit of the president and many to its team, to Steve Witkoff and to Jared Kushner. They saw that Israel's attempted assassination in Doha put the two sides in distress, not only Israel, actually more than two sides. Israel was cornered. It was criticized in Washington, D.C. It was regionally embarrassed because it didn't manage to pull that through. But also its neighboring countries, the moderate Arab countries that have peace treaties with Israel, were actually aligning more with Qatar. On the other hand, Hamas officials abroad suddenly saw that they have no immunity anymore. It's true that the assassination attempt failed, and the US promised Qatar it's not going to happen again. But they, for the first time in this war, these people who lived their lives through hotel rooms and negotiating tables while leading a terrorist organization, they felt that this could, actually hurt them. And to some extent, this also assisted. And of course, Qatar saw that its own game of playing on all fields is also over. Now, you need this kind of a good crisis for all sides to open that crack and just push very hard at the right moment.
So Nadav, you are giving Donald Trump a lot of credit for getting to where we are now. How much do you think Benjamin Netanyahu has been an obstacle to this moment?
That's a big question. Of course, Netanyahu says that he's the reason Israel achieved this moment. And by achieving this moment, I don't mean the end of the war. Netanyahu could have ended the war probably a year ago if he would have wanted to. During the Biden administration, Netanyahu thought it's not a good idea to end the war under the conditions that were set back then. He definitely got now a better deal. Is this deal worth, for instance, the international isolation of Israel, the soldiers that have been killed since? Is it worth it in terms of Israel's security in the long run? These are questions that are going to be asked. The Trump plan as it is today, as it was published, and we still don't have the fine print of the agreement that was signed in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt this night when we are making this conversation, the plan as it was presented answers all of Netanyahu's conditions. And that's the reason why he's overjoyed by it. And he thinks, or that would be his argument, that that actually means an Israeli victory of the war. And if he would have agreed to a deal a year ago, that wouldn't be a victory to anyone but Hamas. And that's going to be his pitch.
And lastly, very briefly, is he, notwithstanding what you've just said, how's he going to deal with those on the far right of his own government? Is he toast down the line?
He's not toast down the line yet, because they're looking to see, first and foremost, if the hostages go back home, as they should, in the coming weekend. And if this happens, and this is just the first phase in the deal, and the IDF is still in Gaza, why should they leave? If the IDF is going to be pulling out to the international border with Gaza, then they will reconsider their position as to the deal. Another dynamic that's going to be created in Israel right now, what we're seeing are massive scenes of joy of the families, the general public. But we're going to hear the names of those terrorists, arch terrorists, that are going to be released, and people responsible for massive suicide bombings in the beginning of the 2000s, the Second Intifada, and others. And those who listen to you remember that it was Yahya Sinwar who ordered the October 7 attack, that was released in a prisoner deal for one hostage, Gilad Shalit. And he went to be the leader of Hamas and had this vision of the October 7 war. And because of that, we're going to see pushback from the Israeli right wing. But no, definitely not. Netanyahu isn't toast for the Israeli right wing at all, and he's going to celebrate this as a huge Israeli victory. And burying Netanyahu politically is always a mistake, considering that he has won more elections than any other leader in Israel's history, and actually any other leader in an elected democracy these days at all. So he knows how to campaign, and he's going to sell this deal and what he did in the last 2 years is a fantastic success. And the question is, will Israelis believe him? Right now, according to polls, he's losing every poll. Cautious pessimism is always the way to go. And I'm cautiously pessimistic about what's going to happen there. But what we do see here is an involvement for the first time of Arab countries from across the region. Moderate Arab countries, not so moderate Arab countries, and they're going to be involved in what's going to happen in Gaza, in rebuilding Gaza. And this gives me hope, because they have the legitimacy that Israel does not have to operate within Gaza.
All right, Nadav, cautiously pessimistic. Fascinating to chat to you. Thanks so much for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark.
So let's talk now to Xavier Abouid, former advisor to the Palestine Liberation Organization. Hey, how are you? It's been a while.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, it's been a while since I last saw you, but we've been speaking on and off over the past few years. What a moment. Tell me, Xavier, how are you feeling tonight?
It's a special moment, but to be honest, we've been there before. I think now there is a difference with the engagement of President Trump. He has been heavily engaged there, and I think that provides of a certain feeling that things may work. But still, if things are like what we read before, the 20 points, I don't think that this agreement will last more than a first phase. I hope I'm mistaken. But at least, I've been talking with some friends in Gaza, and at least they're hopeful that for a few days they're not going to be bombarded.
So you think that Hamas will release all the living hostages, they will stick to their part of the deal, but then you're concerned that Israel will just start again with its bombing of Gaza?
We need to look into the details, Mark. We still don't know what are the changes that were made in Sharm el-Sheikh. But if the details are based on what we already know, I think the first phase could perfectly work. The first phase spoke about a release of all the Israeli captives from Gaza and a release of Palestinian prisoners from the Israeli side, which is also an important point. Who are those people that are going to be released? What are the names? Will Marouane al-Barghouthi, for example, the most popular Palestinian politician, be released from Israeli jails or not? I mean, that would be extremely significant. At the same time that an Israeli withdrawal to something like 50% of Gaza will allow, for example, Gaza City to breathe. I mean, Gaza City was at the bench of being ethnically cleansed. So, in other words, of course, there are very positive elements, and I think that the fact that President Trump now came with the idea or with the principle that there will be no ethnic cleansing in Gaza, I think it's also important. But once again, I think it's still too early to make a big celebration or just to declare that the war is over, understanding that Israel has never, especially under Benjamin Netanyahu, has never honored fully any agreement signed with Palestinians.
But do you think, I mean, you make the point that we've got to where we are now at this point with a new deal signed because of President Trump, because of the way he operates, his unorthodox methods. We've got to that point because of him. So is it maybe logical to think that he will make sure that the other phases are stuck to, that he has put Netanyahu in a corner and that he won't let Netanyahu return to fighting?
I think to be fair, Mark, it's a combination of factors. I would not give it just to President Trump, because I think there is a tremendous shift in international public opinion. There is a call by citizens all over the world for their governments to take concrete actions. This is a moment when there are European countries, for example, that are discussing the possibility of having sanctions on the Israeli occupation. That's something that we never had before. And in this scenario, I think President Trump is trying to act on behalf of Israel. He's trying to act on behalf of their interests, which I'm certain he believes Benjamin Netanyahu is not really protecting. So if the interest of Israel is for the captives to go back, then President Trump is coming to get the captives back. If the interest of Israel is for the war to end, then he's going to do that. If the interest of Israel is, and that's I think a very important point, is to stop this growing isolation that Israel has internationally, I think President Trump is seeking that. And I think that's something that as Palestinians on our side and anyone who is interested to take the situation from the Gaza genocide to a two-state solution or a political solution in general should be very, very cautious, because this is not a moment, to stop the international pressure.
So you believe that Trump had grown fed up with Netanyahu, but that he is still on the side of Israel and therefore not on the side of the Palestinians?
I mean, when you study negotiations, they tell you, focus on interests, not on positions, right?
Mm-hmm. So his interests are with Israel and not with the Palestinian cause. You believe?
Well, some people believe that the interest of Israel is to have a Palestinian state, and I hope President Trump gets to that point. I think we have to accept that the U.S. at this stage is an ally of Israel, not an ally of the Palestinians. In all the announcement, by the way, President Trump issued, he doesn't mention the word Palestinian. He doesn't mention Palestine. He mentions everyone in the region but Palestine.
It's true. I noticed the same thing in that Truth Social post. The word Palestinian was missing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't there. But is it in the interest of our people in Gaza for this to end? Of course it is. And I believe also that the issue of the Israeli captives, it's a matter that has to be solved. Now there is, of course, a very important question here, which I think are the guarantees that those countries that have heavily invested diplomatically in order to make it here, because it's not the US alone. I mean, it's the Qataris, the Egyptians, and the Turks that have been also involved. So what are going to be the assurances that we're not going to have a new bombardment in, I don't know, if tomorrow there are Hamas leaders negotiating in Istanbul, if Israel is not going to bomb there, or, again, those are things, Mark, from the time that you were reporting in the region, that maybe were unthinkable of, but Netanyahu made them thinkable. So it's really a moment to be cautious.
Let's pause for a moment and just reflect for me on the last 2 years for you as a Palestinian.
It's been a nightmare, because it's from the very beginning, Mark, it was clear for us that it was not a Hamas-Israel war. And I think Benjamin Netanyahu at the beginning was very clear when he said that he was going to fight first. He spoke about 5 fronts, including the West Bank. And then he spoke about 7 fronts. Um, and everything has changed for us. I mean, from one side, I mean, I cannot compare our life in the occupied West Bank to what's happening in Gaza, but many things have changed. I mean, now you have gangs of Israeli settlers that are attacking Palestinians on a daily basis with full impunity, protected by Israeli forces, to an extent that we actually believe that settlers are operating government policy in coordination with Israeli forces on the ground. So, in other words, there are two main drivers of Israeli policy over the past 2 years, which are on one side is ethnic cleansing, like what they wanted to do in Gaza, and on the other side is annexation, what's happening in the occupied West Bank. This agreement, by the way, doesn't mention the West Bank, at least what we know until now.
Xavier, two more questions, if I may. First of all, you talked a little bit about the Palestinians who could be released, and potentially among them leadership figures. You talked about Marwan Barghouti. Just tell us about him for people who aren't familiar with him. Who is he? What would it mean for the Palestinian people if he was to be released? And what would it mean for the current Palestinian leadership, Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, if Barghouti was among those released?
Marwan Barghouti has been in jail for over 2 decades now and remains in every single survey considered to be the most popular Palestinian politician. He belongs to Fatah, which is a secular national liberation movement, which is the most prominent movement in the history of the Palestinian struggle for national liberation. He's someone known for being very secular. He's someone known for being very inclusive. He's someone known for having legitimacy all over Palestinian society. And therefore, it's something that may become a game changer. At the moment that people are talking about the need for reforms to the Palestinian Authority, the need for elections in the Palestinian Authority, if Marwan Barghouti gets out of jail, well, I believe that if he's out of jail, he's not going to be allowed to be here. He may go somewhere else. Perhaps he would go to Qatar, for example. But if that's the case, I think many things would change in Palestine. And that's a very important point. Sorry for the interruption. It's a very important point because what are the alternatives that as Palestinians we have? I mean, we are not strong enough to stop the Israeli occupation. We are not strong enough to push the settlers away from the cities. But we can actually change the context. And as Palestinians, I think that there is a lot that can be done in terms of the legitimacy of the Palestinian national movement.
And finally, in one sentence, sum up for me your emotions on this night.
It's the most difficult question you have asked me, and it's perhaps Mark. I mean, we've known each other for many years. I'm someone who, when people are celebrating or crying, out of my professional career, I'm always trying to analyze what may happen. I'm still now in a moment where I don't have many feelings, but I can tell you that I received a message from the Holy Family Church in Gaza City a few minutes ago, and a friend of mine texted, "It seems like I'm not going to be killed." And I think if my friend tonight is going to sleep, at least thinking that they are not going to be bombarded, for me that's a victory.
Xavier Abu Eid, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see you and appreciate it. It's late where you are, so thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Mark.
So Donald Trump is set to travel to the Middle East in the next few days. Israeli sources are suggesting that hostages will start to be released as soon as Saturday. Will this hold, though, and will it be the dawn of a new era for the Middle East? There are so many that hope so. We'll be across every twist and turn. But before I go, we've talked a lot about the diplomacy of all this, the strategy, the politics. But what about the people? Well, here are Michal and Odeh. Michal's best friend was a hostage in Gaza for over 400 days, and she has been working closely with the families of those still in Gaza right now. Odeh is a Palestinian I first met in Gaza back in 2019. He was a teenager then. He's in his 20s now. We've been in touch ever since. This morning, he woke to the news that the war may be over.
It's like a dream that comes true. Like we can't feel the the release, till we're gonna see them back home here with us, safety. And they have a very long way with themselves to become new people after all that they've been through all of that time. We feel so confused. We feel like overwhelmed. Everybody is like awake. We can't sleep because we feel so excited from one side, and from the other side it's like bringing you back to the same days that everything happened. And we want answers. We want to see them back. We want to get over all the things that we've been through in the last 2 years, because it's like a horror movie. It's terrifying.
I was asleep, but it's 2 in the morning now. But my friend from Egypt called to pass on the good news about the agreement, about the ceasefire. I'm overwhelmed with joy, but sad for how we became and the irreversible point that we reached right now. Uh, but overall, it's over. I think I should be happy for that, but I'm delaying my celebration until we see it happen, until we are sure that everything is going to be back to normal, and we can have a decent life again.
Ode and Mikal there. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.